So when the advice is to listen to your body, and if you feel good, keep going. If you start to feel bad, take a break and make some changes. I think that's all BS. I don't agree with any of that. The carnivore diet in particular, any diet, but really, especially getting rid of sugar and processed foods, you are going to feel terrible. There's no two ways around it. There are some people that don't feel terrible, and I'm jealous as hell of them. And God bless them. They got off easy. For me, it was a nightmare. 30, 35 days of utter hell. I hated every second of it. It was one day at a time. It was grit and determination and discipline and a absolute hatred of dying, of being fat, of not breathing, of being sore, of being hurt, of being a victim, of not being able to defend myself, of everything that made me a man was gone. And I wanted all that back. And the only way I could get there was to find that baseline. I'm an entrepreneur by trade. Bought and sold a dozen businesses over the last 30 years. And so I have an analytical mind that makes its way towards numbers. And I said, deductive reasoning here would dictate that I just go to the baseline and figure out what's wrong with me. Start there. So what's the baseline? Fat and protein. That was my approach to the carnivore diet, fat and protein. I was miserable, but I understood, like any addict would, that being miserable is part of the process. I had been addicted to opioids 3 different times in my life because of all of the back issues I've had breaking my back as a teenager. And I understood addiction, and I understood coming off of addiction. I often say on my podcast, the Jerry Brazee podcast, that getting off of some of these stronger opioids in the amounts I was taking, 250, 300 milligrams of OxyContin every single day, of morphine every single day, of a drug called oxymorphon, which is a morphine OxyContin mix. Taking hundreds of milligrams of these pills every single day, waking up in the middle of the night, setting my alarm and having it sitting next on my dresser at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and taking it so I didn't wake up the next morning in withdrawal. I understand what it means. And when you stop, it feels like the marrow in your bones is going to crawl out. It's trying to get out through your bone and through your skin. That's how I define it. It is as miserable a process as you can imagine. My first one took about 30 days, and I had the flu for a good 20 of it. My second one, morphine or methadone, I'd taken for about a year and a half, completely addicted to it. Took me about 30, 35 days, and I was sick for almost every one of them. And finally, oxymorphon. I was on it for about a year and a half, taking 260, 280 milligrams a day. And coming off of that was a way different experience. And it took me much longer to come off of that. And it also stayed with me a lot longer. We're talking months before I was finally over it. So I understand addiction. I understand where that comes from and how that feels. And let me tell you all something right now, no matter how bad you feel, sugar addiction, while strong, sugar addiction, while also very mental, as well as physical, drug addiction, particularly opioid addiction, is stronger when it is both, but many times it is more physical than it is mental. In my case, it was purely physical. And so as I dealt with that and I went through those processes over the course of the last 20 years, I gained that experience. And so when it came to carnivore and changing my diet and living with the pain that would come with the withdrawal as you get rid of the poison in the drug that is sugar and the poison in the drug that is processed foods. And for me, the poison in the drug that is many, many, many carbohydrates that simply turn into sugar, the addiction to fruit and things of that nature for the sweetness of it, because they have manipulated fruit to such an extent that it's barely recognizable by anybody that ate an apple 200 years ago. It's sweet and it's luscious and it's juicy and it's pleasant to look at. It's been scientifically manipulated to look and feel and taste the way that it does. It's been covered in chemicals and covered in chemicals again, and then shipped to you covered in a wax to make sure that it looks as good as humanly possible. And when you eat it, you get a rush from it. That to me is a drug. Now, it's not as bad as sugar, but to me, it's not as benign as anything. It's not as benign as, say, as meat, for instance, or as dairy. I think that fruit is a dessert and should be eaten as a dessert and appreciated as a dessert. But that addiction to these sugars and to these carbohydrates and to these processed foods is strong. It is difficult. And the withdrawal and the way that your brain will mess with you when you do it is very hard. So you have to know, I said all that to say, you have to know what's coming. You got to know how it feels. You got to anticipate it. So when your body starts to throw things at you from left field, and I mean it will, day 4 or day 8 and day 14 for me, I couldn't swallow my steak. I'd chew it in my mouth, and my body, my brain was instructing my body, I am assuming, because I could not swallow it. I ended up taking it out of my mouth and giving it to my dog. And no matter what I did, no matter what I swallowed it with, drank water, no matter what I did, I couldn't swallow it. It was the damnedest thing. And I remember thinking at the time, there are forces at work here that are working against me. I have to stay with it. When the diarrhea sets in, about day 8 for me through day 12, day 14, immediately you're saying this diet's ruining my life. I'm miserable. I'm withdrawing. My energy is low. My brain is telling me I got it. I need the cravings. I have to fulfill them. I have to go in. The habits. I'm sitting in that same chair every day at 10 o'clock at night. I got to go get some Doritos that I've been doing forever, like smoking a cigarette when you get out of bed in the morning. The strong. You're going to want to follow up on them. All of this is attacking you. Your brain is saying, I need carbohydrates. I need sugar. I need energy. I need quick energy so I can store fat but still power the body. Again, the brain thinking it's saving you by killing you. Opportunities are everywhere. You got to go get them. Start by going for a walk.